Authorities in the U.S. say there was a second attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump this past weekend. In the first attempt, the former president was shot in the ear back in July. This weekend, an arrest of Ryan Wesley Ruth, who will be subjected to a mental health evaluation, according to CNN. The 58-year-old apparently has a past including a criminal conviction, attempts to recruit U.S.-trained Afghan fighters to join the Ukrainian military, and a book in which he pondered, among other things, why no one has stepped up to kill Russia's President Vladimir Putin yet. Quote, "The swirling question around the world is why Putin has not yet been killed. In the USA, we've killed many. JFK, MLK, Robert Kennedy, Malcolm X, John Lennon, Tupac, Biggie, Jimmy Hoffa. So many that we can't remember them all." Closed quote. He then asked what happened to the Russian people that they're brainwashed into, quote, totally blind sheep, closed quote, for not killing their president. Well, what does it mean that apparently there's been a second attempt to kill former President Trump before the election? For that, we go to Pittsburgh to speak with law professor and author Dan Kovalik. Dan? Trying to figure out which shadow to box with. What are some of your thoughts looking at this? This is now two attempted assassinations, perhaps. Some people admit it, some don't. There's a big break, of course, between the red shirts and blue shirts on whether or if there was an assassination attempt in either case, and if so, who's trying to kill whom. What do you think in looking at this?
Well, certainly the first attempt was a real attempt, we know. I mean, I think anyone who doesn't agree with that is really not facing reality. There's a dead firefighter, okay? And other people wounded. Okay, so something happened, something real happened, and there's a dead shooter too, by the way. So that's real. From what I understand of what happened yesterday, that seems real as well. So I think we have to go on the assumption that there have been two assassination attempts. We also have to, face the reality that certainly in the first case, the Secret Service at best can be said to have royally screwed that up. I mean, their incompetence was stunning. And we don't have time to go into all the details why that is and how that is. But it was stunning. And the only reason Trump survived that is because he happened to turn his head at the right moment and it only hit his ear instead of his brain. And the second case, I guess the Secret Service maybe was a little better, but still a lot of people think the shooter shouldn't have gotten as far as he did. So the question, of course, a lot of people are asking, is this mere incompetence or is it something more? Of course, we all have visions of John F. Kennedy and the questions we have about that. The one thing about this guy that is interesting to me, the second guy, is that, I think he is a fan of Zelensky. I did see something that he attended a neo-Nazi rally in Ukraine. We know that the neo-Nazis in Ukraine have been training militants around the world for years. There was a Great Nation article on that years ago. So certainly, again, this is a situation where minimally the chickens have come home to roost, right, from U.S. foreign policy. Again, whether there's something more to that, I don't know. But, when lightning strikes twice in the same place, you have to start asking some serious questions, Don.
There's a lot of, first of all, one of our biggest problems, of course, is all of our contact with this stuff is virtual. I'm not going to examine a single document, fingerprint, touch anybody involved, any of that stuff, as is condition for just about every other human being in the world. It's all going to come through the news media. It's so hard to parse, like each thing, what's happening here, what's happening here, what's happening here. But one of the things that would be useful for people to know that they don't know to begin digging through that is that there is a history of assassinations by the U.S. government, by CIA and others of government officials around the world. Then, of course, you mentioned Kennedy, and we could go through Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and whoever else. Maybe you could play with a little of that.
Yeah, well, first of all, we also have to keep in mind that yesterday also Venezuela uh, released evidence that there were three Americans involved in an attempt to assassinate Nicolas Maduro.
Right, that's right, that's right.
And they captured a cache of weapons. And now I think there's that is undoubtedly the act of the CIA. I think we can be certain of that, and I think they probably would barely deny that. Now, in terms of Trump, I mean, look, I think we have to start with the premise that anything we say about this is pure speculation. We just don't
Yep.
know. We certainly know. I think it's safe to say that the intelligence services don't like Trump, judging from the fact that they all jumped on board the Russiagate train in 2016, and that was completely fraudulent. And yet they pushed that hard. Every intelligence agency did. You know, he is seen as an outlier. He's seen as a loose cannon, particularly on foreign policy. He has made some noise about making peace with Russia and peace in Ukraine, which seems to be a seditious statement at this point.
Yeah, agreed. Yep. They're treating it like that. I mean, you know that.
I know that personally. No, I mean, you know, so we have to start from that starting point. Now, would they go so far as to kill him? I mean, I just don't know. I want to be careful about making a judgment like that. It certainly wouldn't be outside the realm of reality. Now, would they want to do it in this kind of open way? I mean, you know, maybe there's other ways to get to him. They're certainly not beyond poisoning people and whatnot. But we'll have to see. But again, I think the incompetence certainly has to be criticized and taken into account. I mean, 2 assassination attempts within a period of a few months. I mean, that has to be unprecedented. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. I saw a statement by Melania Trump, who just, you know, was saying that she doesn't feel her husband safe and they're not protecting him. I don't know. I take that seriously, certainly. And I think Americans, even if they don't like Trump, and obviously there's people who don't, there's people who hate Trump, I still don't think they should want him to be assassinated. I don't think that is good for American democracy. You know, I don't think that advances anything. I think it leads to more strife. But look, the fact they're trying to put him in jail, you know, is, you know, I don't know. Again, that's more context to all this. So, and again, the Ukraine connection is interesting because he says he wants to make peace in Ukraine. So, and the mainstream press, you know, pretty much all the mainstream press opposed him on that. And everyone in Washington opposes him on that. So, again, draw your own conclusions. It's certainly food for thought, Don.
And I'm going to just change this up a little bit on you. It occurs to me that the bio that they're painting of Ryan Wesley Ruth, this is the gentleman's name. He's got 3 names, you notice. He's the 58-year-old who, it says, he's had an unusual past, a criminal conviction, tried to recruit U.S.-trained Afghan fighters to join the Ukrainian military, and wrote a self-published book, Wondering Why President Putin Has Not Yet Been Killed. Now, if this is the portrait of an assassination attempt of an American president or presidential candidate, it's an interesting contrast to the imagery they used with Lee Harvey Oswald when he supposedly shot and killed President John Kennedy, in that there was nothing as crude and bloodthirsty in the statements, the political statements that were attributed to Oswald as, how come you guys haven't murdered that evil Putin, and I'm going to do it? I mean, it's a different cultural image almost. If you're like addressing a different audience of, you know, body politic or something between the 1963 America and the 2024 America, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, again, even in the height of the Cold War, you didn't hear people talking about assassinating the Soviet premier, right? And in fact, the
Yep.
presidents of the United States got along very well with their Soviet
Yes.
counterparts. There's photos, the famous photos of Kennedy hugging Khrushchev, right? And
Nixon too, remember the kitchen debates and all that stuff.
yeah, and again, even Stalin, Roosevelt and Stalin got along swimmingly, actually.
Yep, that's right.
So no, this is a change. The U.S. is at war with the world, and I think people need to understand that we've lost our prestige around the world, our credibility, our diplomatic standing. Even our allies, I think, understand that we are not a reliable ally, or certainly they should understand that. It's now just pure power politics, right? It used to be that we would lead, we were always involved in overthrowing other governments and doing terrible things, but that at least was, along with that did go a certain amount of diplomatic work and attempting to win the hearts and minds of people through the Peace Corps or our space program. Now it's just naked violence is what we're left with. And
Yeah.
that should be frightening to every American.
Yeah, especially while they're involved in a war with Russia, because it could go to the ultimate. I mean, this is the mindset that goes there.
Absolutely. And that's where we're headed, Don. And no one seems to care. That's the other thing that really disturbs me. You hear very few people caring, expressing any concern that we're headed towards nuclear war. And that's just baffling to me, utterly baffling.
Even an awareness of it. I know.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And hope you're well.
Thank you, Don.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.